now.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be joining you all today. Excuse me, I'm Danielle Lachance, and I'm a research assistant and the lab manager in Dr. Lisa Nisbet's Nature Relatedness Lab in Peterborough, Canada. Today, I'm happy to share with you a summary of what is currently known about nature connectedness and how to foster it. So I want to dive right in and talk about the well-being benefits of connecting with nature. Just highlighting this to start because there is an extensive amount of research on the psychological and mental health benefits of spending time in natural environments. In general, people who spend more time in nature do tend to be happier. Even short 10 to 15-minute walks in nature have been shown to reduce negative emotions such as anger, anxiety, and depression, but also increase positive emotions such as happiness, joy, and awe. Nearby nature is also associated with greater life satisfaction. Views of nature from the home, for example, have been linked to better neighborhood satisfaction, and views of nature from the workplace have been linked to better workplace satisfaction or job satisfaction. So people not only feel happier when they're connecting with nature, but they're functioning better in their everyday lives as well. Short walks in nature can increase people's vitality or feeling alive or energized. But people who spend more time in nature are also reporting that they experience more autonomy, personal growth, and purpose or meaning in their lives. So there are also many cognitive benefits to spending time in nature. For example, 50-minute walks in nature have been shown to improve people's concentration and focus when compared to people who take 50-minute walks in urban environments, for example. Even 40-second micro breaks on a green rooftop was found to improve students' focus when compared to students who took a micro break on a concrete rooftop. Students' engagement in the classroom has also been shown to improve after spending time in nature. Compared to students who completed indoor lessons, third grade students who completed 40-minute lessons were more likely to follow instructions, more likely to ask for assistance later, and were more likely to stay on task in the classroom. So nature contact can also enhance short-term memory. 50-minute walks in nature, again, have been shown to increase people's performance on different memory tasks. And having natural elements in the classroom has also been shown to be beneficial. Indoor plants, for example, or views of nature from the classroom help students perform better on lecture materials or memorizing lecture materials, but it also helped them achieve better grades than students who took the same lessons, but in a classroom without views of nature or any natural elements. Wilderness education programs have been shown to significantly enhance creative problem-solving skills as well. And this is, again, when compared to students in traditional classroom settings. Post-secondary students who spent a semester living and traveling together were better able to come up with solutions to practical budgeting problems when compared to the classmates in the traditional classroom setting, for example. But the benefits of connecting with nature extend beyond the benefits for the individual. Nature contact can enhance people's perspective taking and empathy for other people. Outdoor adventure education can promote better cooperation and group work in students, and residential green space has been linked to a greater sense of community. Nature contact not only increases people's care and concern for other people, but also for the natural environment. People care more about environmental issues and are more likely to act in ways that support the health of the planet. They're more likely to opt for sustainable transportation, reduce their waste consumption, or support environmental initiatives, for example. So in sum, connecting with nature has benefits at the individual, interpersonal, and societal levels. Despite evidence of nature's benefits, people are spending less time in nature than they have in previous generations. On average, people are spending over 90% of their time indoors. The decline in nature contact has been referred to as the extinction of experience. And this is evident in language, ecological knowledge, and even in pop culture. For example, about 5 or 6 years ago, the Oxford Junior Dictionary was updated to replace nature words such as heron and minnow with technological terms such as blog and cut and paste. And this was done to better reflect words that children were more familiar with. So in general, knowledge of local plant species has been lost among wealthier industrialized countries. Research suggests that children today are better able to identify cartoon characters than local wildlife. So virtual nature is not replacing nature experiences either. The amount of natural settings portrayed in Disney films has been on a steady decline in the past 70 years. And references to nature in other film storylines or in fiction books and song lyrics is also on the decline. One explanation for the growing disconnection is the global rise in urbanization. With more people living in cities, fewer people have access to natural spaces. Right now, over half of the world's population is living in cities, and this number is projected to rise to about 70% in the next 30 years. But simply having access to nature does not mean people will spend more time in it. People often underestimate the benefits of nature contact, and they're more likely to spend time interacting with digital devices than they are with the natural world. On average, American teenagers report about 9 hours of digital media use a day, and this excludes time spent on school-related tasks. The average American adult reports spending over 11 hours a day interacting with digital media. So even youth who live in small towns and in the country are spending more time in front of screens than they are outdoors. This is problematic because electronic media use has been linked to stress, anxiety, depression, and even attention problems and procrastination, along other hosts of maladaptive behaviors. So there's evidence that digital media use also counteracts the benefits of spending time in nature. A recent study found that only students who spent time in green space without an electronic device benefited from their nature experience. The extinction of experience can be a serious problem and serious implications for human and environmental health. People are not only missing opportunities to experience nature's benefits, but this disconnection with nature can lead people to undervalue it and be less motivated to protect it. Therefore, fostering a connection with nature may be crucial in supporting both human and environmental health. Nature connectedness, also referred to as nature relatedness, is a subjective sense of closeness or belonging to the natural world. It's considered relatively stable, like a trait. So when it's developed in early childhood, for example, it tends to persist throughout adulthood, but it can also fluctuate and be enhanced through nature experiences. People with a stronger connection with nature spend more time in it. They visit their backyards and local green spaces more frequently, and they're more likely to travel farther distances to visit more remote wilderness locations. In general, people with a stronger connection with nature tend to be happier. They also tend to be more mindful and more altruistic. So in other words, they're more aware of and pay greater attention to the present moment, and they're more likely to put self-interest aside for more generous and cooperative behaviors. They also, they not only care for other people, but they also care for all living things. And this is reflected in their values, attitudes, and behaviors. They're more likely to compost, buy eco-friendly products, own a pet, or donate to environmental causes, for example. Research suggests that a connection with nature may explain why those who spend more time in it are more likely to make efforts to protect it. Nature connectedness is a multi-dimensional construct that can be measured through self-reports. Asking people about their emotional connection with nature, their attitudes towards nature, or their experiences in nature are different ways of measuring nature connectedness. It can also be measured by assessing how much someone has incorporated nature into their identity, or the degree to which they see nature as separate from themselves or part of who they are. Various self-report scales have been designed to measure one or more dimensions of nature connectedness, but there's really good consistency between them, suggesting that they're all measuring that same core construct. For anyone interested, the North American Association of Environmental Education has a practitioner's guide, and it describes different measures and which measure might be most appropriate in certain contexts. So you can visit their website and download the PDF document for free. So how is nature connectedness fostered? So for one, spending more time in direct contact with nature can foster nature connectedness. Various kinds of nature activities can help people feel more connected. For more physical activities like exercise or even passive engagement like bird watching. People generally feel happier engaging in various nature activities when compared with activities that they might spend time doing in indoor or urban environments. Initiatives that have shown some promise in engaging people with nature more are the David Suzuki Foundation's 30 by 30 Nature Challenge in Canada and the 30 Days Wild initiative in the UK. Both initiatives are designed to get people to spend more time in nature. The David Suzuki Foundation encourages people to spend 30 minutes a day for 30 days, to get at least 30 minutes a day for 30 days, whereas the 30 Days Wild campaign encourages people to participate in 30 random acts of wildness. Both organizations provide ideas and tips to give examples on how to get people engaged, such as reading outdoors or gardening, or even following the movements of a bumblebee. On average, people who participate in these campaigns feel happier and more connected. In 2015, the 30 Days Wild initiative also asked people to report on their conservation behaviors, such as growing plants or doing other conservation work around the home. They found that after participating in the program, people also reported engaging in more of these behaviors. That same year, the David Suzuki Foundation asked people to report on the amount of time they spent doing different activities throughout the week. These activities include being active in nature or relaxing in nature, or how much time they spent on their phones or surfing the internet. Those who completed the challenge nearly doubled the amount of time spent being active in nature, from about 5.5 hours a week to 10 hours a week. They increased their amount of time relaxing in nature even more, from 2.5 hours at the beginning of the challenge to roughly 6 hours at the end of the challenge. And while they're spending time outside, they were spending less time using electronic media. They reduced their phone usage by almost an hour a week, and they reduced the amount of time they spent emailing or surfing the internet by almost 4 hours a week. So these initiatives appear to promote a variety of healthier habits, even those that aren't directly aiming to influence. People who are more attentive to and aware of their surroundings when in nature appear to develop a stronger connection with it than those who are less attentive or less mindful when they're in nature. Research indicates that giving people some form of guidance to direct their attention to the natural environment helps promote their connection with nature. So this guidance has been given in a few different ways, but with very similar results. For example, students who were asked to write down 3 good things in nature they noticed each day for 5 days reported a stronger connection with nature when they were compared with students who were asked to write about 3 factual things, such as items in the kitchen or items on a desk. Directing students' attention to beautiful aspects of nature has been shown to enhance their awareness and enjoyment of their surroundings. But pointing out natural beauty might not be necessary or might not be needed. Just simply asking students to pay more attention to their surroundings has helped them be more mindful of the natural environment. It's increased their connection with nature and it's improved their well-being. An example of this is a study done at Carleton University that investigated the effects of walking in nature when given mindful instructions. So they compared 3 groups, one that walked indoors, one that walked outdoors, and one that walked outdoors, but that were given mindful instructions. So the mindful instructions ask students to be aware of the sensations of the body and other sensory experiences, such as the colors of the leaves or the fragrance in the air. Students who completed the mindful walk reported a stronger connection with nature than students in the other 2 groups. And they also reported fewer negative emotions and more feelings of awe. One of the most studied activities for increasing nature connectedness is outdoor environmental education. Programs on a variety of environmental topics, such as aquatic or woodland species, ecological problems, and methods of protecting the environment, have been effective in increasing children's connection with nature when compared with children who don't participate in these programs. So for example, children who participate in these programs were often compared with children who learned the same material for the same length of time, but had done so in traditional classroom settings. The longer the programs are, the more effective they appear to be. So programs that last for several weeks tend to be more effective than a program that lasts for a day, for example. Research also shows that younger children who participate in outdoor environmental education programs have greater increases, feel a stronger and more longer lasting sense of connectedness with the natural world. So these are generally children under the ages of about 10 or 11 years old. But environmental education can also be effective in increasing nature connectedness in adults. People who participated in a sustainability program in a botanical garden reported a stronger connection with nature, greater knowledge of environmental issues, and a greater willingness to participate or engage in sustainable behaviors than park visitors or garden visitors who didn't participate in the program. There is evidence that adults who participate in citizen science research also experience a stronger connection with nature. Community volunteers or amateur scientists who collect environmental data for researchers, for example, identifying tracks or collecting animal hair, also report feeling happier and more connected with nature after participating in the citizen science program. An ability to correctly identify bird species has also been associated with a greater connection with nature. So I mention this because taken together, these findings highlight that the importance of including some sort of environmental or educational component with nature contact, so that it helps people develop more of an appreciation for the natural world, but also improves their well-being and motivation to engage in more pro-environmental behaviors. Researchers in the UK identified 5 potential pathways to nature connectedness. I say potential pathways because more research is needed on some of these pathways to determine which kinds of activities might be more effective or beneficial. But an awareness of these pathways is helpful to help people generate ideas for designing activities or programs aimed at increasing nature connectedness. So these pathways include contact, compassion, emotion, meaning, and beauty. Contact refers to a sensory engagement with nature. So it could go beyond direct experiences with nature and noticing nature to get people to become more aware of or engage in their other sensory experiences, such as listening to bird song or the buzzing of a bee, or even working with their hands and getting their hands dirty while gardening. The compassion pathway refers to care for nature, acts of care for nature. So this could be activities or actions that support protecting the environment, like installing a pollinator garden. Getting people to reflect on or write about their experiences in nature are also examples that have been used to connect people with nature through emotion, meaning, and beauty. These pathways might also be enhanced through art, which I'm going to leave for the next speaker as a potential way of connecting more people with nature. So these pathways have already been adopted by some environmental organizations to adapt to existing programs or to generate new ideas for activities that could enhance people's experiences. So for example, one of the random acts of wildness was for the 30 Days Wild Nature Challenge was to climb a tree. And they just slightly adapted this to be get to know a tree to better reflect that meaning component. And instead of having this more dominating view of nature, having that more meaningful interaction with nature as just one example. So on the 30 Days Wild website, they do have an app and a list of activities to generate ideas on how to get people engaged that are really useful. But the Pathways to Stewardship and Kinship project is actually a really useful website as well, just pathwaysproject.ca. The Pathways project lists different activities that are age appropriate for children. And it's very effective for generating ideas in that way as well. So there's quite a bit we know, but there's even more possibly that we don't know about nature connectedness. And so a lot more research is needed. For one, more intervention studies are needed. We need to have a better idea of what sort of activities beyond outdoor environmental education or noticing nature or spending time in nature might actually increase people's connectedness. We also need to know more about what would foster continued engagement. So for people who are adults, for example, and have feel less connected with nature, participating in a one-time program may be beneficial temporarily, but we don't know if their baseline connectedness is going to return after the program. So keeping them engaged is one thing we would like to know. Also, cross-cultural nature connectedness is something that is being investigated as well. Is nature connectedness the construct as we know it similar across different cultures? At the moment, most of the research on this has been studied in Western industrialized societies. So people might connect with nature in different ways, and there might be different associations with nature connectedness in other areas. So that is a quick summary of what we know about nature connectedness and how to foster it. If you have any questions, I realize that was quite brief and quick. To follow up with any of this information, you can reach me at Danielle, LACHA2 at trentu.ca. But I also encourage you to visit the Nature Relatedness website, naturerelatedness.ca. There you can contact Dr. Lisa Nisbet, who studies this. You can take a look at the nature relatedness scale as one of the measures of connectedness. And you can even reach out if you're interested in working on a project. She has helped as well with back translations. So if if you want to translate the English scale into other languages, she's very helpful with that. The scale has been already translated into multiple languages, including French, Hungarian, Turkish, for example. So feel free to reach out, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Danielle. Thank you for your nice presentation.
Thank you.
Really, really nice. So yeah, I would suggest we have now 5 more minutes for our discussion and possible questions. And yeah, I would suggest if we start with possible questions from us. Do you want to?
Oh, any questions for me, or I wasn't sure.
Of course, there are many questions posed to this. And for one, of course, you show an enormous amount of evidence that actually this nature relatedness is something which you can use as a concept to improve pro-environmental behavior. However, you also note a lot of barriers. And these barriers are the ones which need to be crossed. So what barriers are the most important to get rid of? Because that is, of course, how we should change our school systems. So, and then it's always good to have a priority, what to change first. So do you have an opinion on what we could do with classrooms which obviously do not work to increase nature relatedness?
I definitely know that whatever the priority is would probably depend on the context, whereas, for example, some school districts might see it as more safety issues, where others it might be just having access to nature spaces in bigger cities to get students engaged. But there is evidence that this is already changing policy. Seeing in some provinces in Canada, for example, implementing some sort of outdoor education component into the education system. We're seeing this in a few other countries as well. So those larger scale policy changes are really needed, but at the individual level, I think getting more teachers comfortable and finding ways that they can bring nature into the classroom and finding creative ways to do this regardless of the barriers, even bringing in indoor plants or bringing in guests that can bring some species into the classroom so students get that more interaction with turtles, for example, or that greater familiarity if they can't bring them outside. So I think it's a very context specific situation, but I think it's just really getting creative in how to do it with the barriers in place.
Is there already evidence that indeed these changes, which are in a normal context, whether they are successful in terms of changing nature relatedness in a meaningful way?
So whether or not those changes in the schools are having an impact, is that what you're asking? At the moment, to my awareness, there isn't, but I know right now that there's research ongoing, asking teachers questions about the barriers to help develop some sort of plans as to how to overcome them. And I know the research will be ongoing there as how those programs. So I should say that there is the research comparing the outdoor education component versus the indoor, for sure. That research is evident. But what I'm saying is adaptive ways for schools that might not have that access. I think more research there needs to be implemented, like that, those more interactive sort of in-class things that could possibly be done if getting outside is a barrier.
Maybe one last question, Anna. I saw you already.
Yeah.
One
One
of
last question is possible. Yeah.
one. Let's then make this question quick about the time investment that you need to do. How long do you need to implement this kind of education? How much time should it need in normal education to get somewhere with nature connectedness? Is, to put it bluntly, is 1 hour per week enough?
That's a difficult question to answer, because a lot of researchers say we need to increase people's contact with nature, but there's not necessarily a specific amount of time. There's more research coming out with beneficial doses. So spending at least 20 minutes outside, for example. But that they more address the actual being in nature as opposed to the actual activities that people are doing, and how those activities, the specific, more immersive engagement activities to get people involved. And I think unfortunately, I'm not answering this well, but I think it just depends on the context, right? Because I think some school boards would be more okay with, or they have the capacity to do these sorts of things, especially if they have the environment. I think of Trent University as an example that has a lot of green space on it, and the students are out on campus a lot collecting data, but you wouldn't see that in a school in downtown Toronto, for example. So I think that would affect it, but also there's going to be different barriers as well as to how quickly you can get it implemented. But I think it's just it's really hard to identify the barrier for your specific context. And I think that's the first course of action. It would be great to see wide scale change, and it should always be pushed towards that, to see more policy changes in this. But I still think that much can be done on the individual level within individual classrooms to start showing more evidence that this is working.
So basically what you're saying is it is a complex matter, and I do not really know how much time is definitely needed. I think that that's a wise answer, at least. Yeah.
Thank you.
Very wise. Yeah. Thank you so much, Danielle. Thank you really much. So our time is up for this presentation, and yeah, thanks a lot really for your time and your effort. And yeah.
It was lovely meeting all of you, and thank you so much for having me. I really admire the work that you do and wish to see more of this in future as well. I'd love to keep in touch, and let me know how your future projects are going. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Danielle.